You ever seen a wolf begging to be part of a pack? No. A real wolf walks alone. A lion doesn't explain why it's in the jungle, it just is. Some of you feel like you're alone. No one's calling, no one's checking in. Friday night comes and your phone is silent. You think something's wrong with you. You think life is punishing you. But what if I told you being alone is the greatest gift life could give you? Because when you're alone, you learn who you are. When you're alone, you find your purpose. And when you find your purpose, the right people, the people who match your vision, your mindset, your hunger, will find you. Loneliness is power. You ever notice how people fear being alone? They think if no one's around them, something's wrong. They think silence means failure. But let me tell you something. Some of the strongest, most dangerous men in history spent time alone. Not because they were rejected, not because they weren't liked, but because they understood something the world doesn't want to admit. Solitude is power. When you're alone, you're forced to deal with yourself. No distractions, no background noise, no fake friends hyping you up when you don't deserve it. Just you, your thoughts, your reality. And that's where real growth happens, because most people avoid themselves. They surround themselves with people, entertainment, nonsense, just so they never have to sit in silence and ask, who am I? What do I really want? What am I willing to do for it? A man who can't be alone is weak. He relies on others to fill his time, to give him purpose, to validate his existence. But a man who can walk alone, that's the man who holds all the power. He doesn't need permission to move. He doesn't need approval to chase his vision. He doesn't need constant reassurance to believe in himself. He's dangerous, not because he's reckless, but because he's disciplined, because he's built in silence. Look at the greats, the warriors, the kings, the legends. Every single one of them at some point walked alone. Why? Because they understood that loneliness wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. While the world was laughing, partying, wasting time, they were sharpening their minds, their bodies, their spirits. They were focused on something bigger than popularity. People fear what they don't understand. So when they see a man who doesn't chase validation, who doesn't need constant company, who doesn't beg to be included, they don't know what to do with him. He's unpredictable, he's unshaken, he's unbreakable. That's the kind of man you need to be. Stop looking at loneliness as a weakness. Stop thinking you need people around you 24/7 to prove you matter. The real ones, the ones who build empires, change history, create legacies, they all walked alone first. They all learned to stand on their own. And when they returned, the world was never the same again. Discipline over distractions. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they're distracted. They want success, but they also want comfort. They want discipline, but they also want entertainment. They say they're focused, but the second their phone buzzes, the second their friends call, the second something fun comes up, they're gone. A man who can't control his distractions will never control his future. Because every time you give in to something meaningless, you trade a piece of your potential. Every time you choose a temporary pleasure over long-term growth, you set yourself back. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. They wonder why they're stuck. They wonder why they keep starting over, why success feels out of reach. But the truth is simple. They've never learned how to be alone with their mission. If you want something great, you have to give up what's average. You have to stop running to distractions every time things get hard. You have to stop seeking comfort when you should be chasing progress. The man who can sit in silence and do the work day after day, night after night, without needing validation, without needing entertainment, without needing applause, that's the man who wins. Discipline isn't built in crowds. It's not built in parties. It's not built in conversations that lead nowhere. Discipline is built in those lonely hours when no one is watching, when no one is clapping for you, when no one cares what you're doing. And the real test, it's not how hard you work when people are looking. It's how hard you work when no one sees, when no one checks in, when it's just you, your goals, and the quiet. They think it means they're missing out. They think it means they're not living. But the ones who understand, oh, they move differently. They don't get distracted by nonsense because they've tasted focus. They've felt what it's like to be fully locked in. And once you feel that, once you see what happens when you put your head down and work, without stopping, without seeking approval, without breaking focus, nothing else will ever feel as good. Nothing else will ever be worth your time. So the question is simple. Are you disciplined or are you distracted? Because you can't be both. Greatness requires isolation. Before a man becomes great, he walks alone. That's the rule, that's the process, that's the cost. People love to talk about success, but they don't talk about what it takes to get there. They don't tell you about the nights spent alone, the hours grinding in silence, the sacrifices nobody sees. They show you the end result, the money, the power, the respect, but they don't show you the isolation that built it. Because before any man reaches his peak, he has to go through the season where it's just him, his vision, and nothing else. And most people don't make it because they can't handle that part. They want companionship. They want constant reassurance. They want someone to tell them they're on the right path. But that's not how greatness works. The biggest moves, the most powerful transformations, the deepest breakthroughs, they don't happen in front of crowds. They happen in solitude. Think about the warriors of the past, the kings, the legends, the icons. They didn't rise to power surrounded by comfort. They weren't held up by 1,000 hands telling them how great they were. No, they had to disappear first. They had to be alone. They had to train in the dark, suffer in silence, build themselves from nothing. Because the moment you decide to chase something bigger than yourself, the world will test you. It will strip you of distractions. It will take away the people who don't belong. It will make sure you are truly ready. This is where most men break. They feel lonely and they run back to comfort. They feel misunderstood and they start explaining themselves to people who will never get it. They feel like they're missing out and they crawl back to mediocrity just to feel included. But the ones who make it, they embrace the solitude, they use it, they sharpen their minds, their bodies, their skills. They build in the quiet so that when they finally step back into the world, they don't just fit in, they take over. The journey to greatness is not crowded, it's empty for a reason. Because only a few are willing to walk it. Only a few are willing to endure, and only a few come out on the other side as legend. Silence builds strength. Silence is the most uncomfortable thing for most people. They run from it. They fill it with noise, distractions, anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves. But a man who wants to be strong, truly strong, must learn to embrace silence. Because in that silence, you face yourself. You face your weaknesses, your fears, your doubts. And most men can't handle that. They drown it out with constant entertainment, pointless conversations, and empty distractions. They think that by staying busy, they're moving forward. But movement isn't progress. Noise isn't growth. A man who never stops to reflect, to think, to truly listen to himself, he's not in control. He's just drifting. The strongest men in history understood the power of silence. They knew that real strength isn't found in the crowd. It's not in the loudest voice or the biggest following. It's in the mind of the man who can sit alone without distraction and still be at peace, because that man doesn't need the world to tell him who he is. He already knows. Silence reveals the truth. It shows you who you really are. When there's no one to impress, no one to entertain, no one to pretend for, it strips away the masks. And for some, that's terrifying because they don't like what they see. They realize they're weak, unfocused, unsure of themselves. And instead of fixing it, they run. They surround themselves with more noise, more distractions, more people to make them feel comfortable. But comfort doesn't build warriors. A man who can sit in silence and sharpen his mind, that's a man who can't be broken. He's not shaken by opinions because he's already faced his own doubts. He's not desperate for approval because he's already learned to validate himself. He's not afraid of being alone because he's used that solitude to grow stronger. You learn to be silent, you learn to listen to yourself, to your instincts, to the lessons life is trying to teach you. And when you step back into the world, you don't move like the rest. You're not desperate for attention. You're not begging to be seen. You walk with a presence, a confidence, a power that only comes from a man who has conquered himself. And that kind of man changes everything. You outgrow the average? Most people don't understand what happens when you start leveling up. They think growth is just about working harder, getting stronger, becoming smarter, but what they don't realize is that growth comes with a price. And that price, you outgrow people. At first, it's subtle. The conversations don't feel the same. The things that used to excite you start feeling empty. You sit in a room full of people, and instead of feeling connected, you feel distant. It's not because you're better than them. It's not because they're bad people. It's because you're changing. And when you change, the world around you reacts. People say they want to improve, but most don't. They want to stay comfortable. They want to stay the same while hoping life somehow gets better. So when they see you putting in the work, when they see you making sacrifices, when they see you becoming disciplined, it makes them uncomfortable. Because now you're a mirror. You show them what they could be but aren't willing to become. And instead of being inspired, most people take the easy way out. They distance themselves. They start doubting you. They try to pull you back down. This is where most men fail. They start feeling guilty. They start slowing down to keep up with people who aren't even moving. They shrink themselves just to fit in. But listen, if you have to lower your standards to stay connected, that connection was never meant for you. You can't expect people to grow with you. You can't wait for them to catch up. Some will, most won't. And that's just how it is. The moment you decide to go all in on your purpose, you will lose people. Friends will fade, conversations will die, invitations will stop. And that's okay. Because the ones who truly belong in your life, they won't be threatened by your growth. They'll match it. The world rewards the man who is willing to walk alone. It punishes the one who stays in place out of fear of being misunderstood. So ask yourself, are you willing to keep moving forward, even if it means leaving people behind? Or will you slow yourself down just to keep others comfortable? Because at the end of the day, you're either outgrowing the average or you're staying average. There is no in-between. The right people will find you when you start walking your own path. The first thing you notice is how lonely it feels. The people you thought would always be there start fading away. The conversations that used to excite you now feel empty. You find yourself standing alone, wondering if you made the right choice. But here's what most people don't realize. Loneliness isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning. See, when you decide to chase something bigger than yourself, life removes the ones who no longer belong. Not because you're better than them, but because they were never meant to go where you're headed. Growth forces separation. Elevation requires isolation. And the ones who truly belong in your life, they won't disappear. They'll find you. Too many men make the mistake of chasing people who were never meant to stay. They beg for friendships that have expired. They try to force connections that no longer fit. But if someone can't handle your growth, if they don't support your vision, if they make you feel like you have to shrink just to be around them, they were never your people to begin with. The right people don't need explanations. They don't feel threatened by your ambition. They don't get insecure when you start moving differently. They see your hunger, your discipline, your purpose, and they respect it. They match it. They add to it. That's why you can't settle for just any crowd. Some people are distractions dressed as friendships. Some are dead weight disguised as loyalty. And some are chains pretending to be support. Learn to recognize the difference. A real brotherhood isn't built on convenience. It's built on alignment. It's built on shared values, shared vision, shared drive. It's not about how long you've known someone, it's about where you're going. So if you're alone right now, don't rush to fill the space. Stay on your path. Keep working in silence. Keep becoming the kind of man who attracts warriors, not leeches. Because the right ones, the ones who push you higher, who sharpen your mind, who challenge you to be even greater, they will come. But you'll never find them if you keep clinging to the wrong ones. Keep walking, keep building, and trust that the right people will find you when you're exactly where you need to be. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like walking alone was the only option? Have you outgrown people who couldn't keep up with your vision? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Let's see how many real ones out here are walking their own path. And if this message hit you different, if it woke something up inside you, don't just sit on it. Like this video, share it, and make sure you subscribe. Because of this journey, it's only for the few. And if you're still here, I know you're one of them.